Welcome everybody to Purpose People. I've got an amazing guest with us today talking about recruitment, all the things that she's done in the past and in now what she's doing in the present. It's Katie from Talent 10. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Lovely to be here in this beautiful building as well.
Yeah, and you found us, so well done.
Thank you. Yeah,
This week there was a lot of traffic changes, but you managed to just go straight through.
Sailed straight through, so I'm here.
Excellent. So Katie, just tell us a little bit about what you currently do now, and then we'll go back a little bit and explore, the life that you led before you started.
So I'm co-founder of Talent 10. We are not just a recruitment business. We also help businesses find their people, but then keep and grow them as well. And we'll probably go a little bit more into this later, but we see that it's important that when people are placed into an organization, to us, we want them to succeed. And we want them to have a great experience and have that great employee journey. So we work with predominantly smaller businesses, startups, scale-ups, to not only find but keep and grow, so that they may not have access to a full HR team, a full recruitment team. We lift and drop into their business and do it all for them. We ultimately think that the biggest asset that any business has is their people.
Yeah,
and without them, they're nothing. And we're here to make sure that that asset is well cared for.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I think it's Richard Branson that says that thing, he says the people are the priority. Look after your staff and everything seems to take care of itself.
Yeah.
And I think for me, you're right, the people are the assets of the business. It's the power of the team at the end of the day.
Yeah, they'll make or break you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's amazing that if you've got one person that's misaligned, how that can change the business.
And I'm sure we've all seen it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've all made mistakes as well. I know I've made mistakes when bringing people into a team and maybe brought them on for the wrong reason. And I'm not about bringing people on to fit. I'm about bringing people on to complement. Yeah. Because fitting in, I've got issues with that. Fitting in just means aligning with everybody else, and that can cause exclusion, and that's absolutely something I'm against. What you want is a really cohesive, complementary team. Have
you heard of the forming, storming, norming and performing?
Yeah.
Because that for me is just a great thing in terms of team building. You get the wrong person, that storming seems to be a lot longer than it needed to be. Yeah.
And you can see it happening when you're with a team. And I remember doing it early days of studying the forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning they had on the end.
Do you want to share? Do you want to share, or shall I? Do you want to share about what they mean? So for the listeners,
I haven't revised it, but
I know. Let's see. Go.
So when it's the stages of a team development and creation. So when there's the forming stages where you're sort of getting together, sort of starting to learn about each other, and then storming, that it's seen that you will inevitably hit a point where there's a little bit of friction, where you get to know each other better, but then kind of find the things that you maybe don't like about each other. But then that's the point. You've got to get through that to when you're getting to the point where you're performing, because you know each other's strengths, weaknesses, you hold each other up, and you're an incredible team. Yeah. But there is that additional one that's been added on in more recent years, I believe, the adjourning, that actually sometimes a team has to close. And sometimes a project may come to an end, or somebody leaves. Yeah. And how do you manage that close? Because inevitably you're going to go right back to the beginning if there's remaining people left behind.
Yeah. So the version that I've had is that every time you add or take away a member of the team or something changes, then you will go back through that naturally. And I think where I saw this pot into play was naturally in a football team. So I run a football team. I set one up. I went through every stage, but because I was aware of forming, storming, norming and performing. And I remember we were forming, doing really, really well. And then I think we had a challenge with penalty taking. It's a funny story, but the thing is that the regular penalty taker should be stuck to take the penalty. Somebody else wanted to take the penalty. Wanted to give it to someone. So they won the penalty and they wanted to give the ball to somebody else to take the penalty. And I said, no, it goes to the penalty taker, because that's what we've decided. So it created all manner of confusion or whatever. Anyway, long story short, the guy gets the ball, he takes a penalty and hits the worst shot I've ever seen, and somehow it goes in. So it was okay because he'd never missed a penalty. But there was storming in that process then, because it's just not everybody knew their positions, or it wasn't clear. And, we had to just say, look, we've named the penalty taker. He's the penalty taker. Until he misses one, we won't change it. And that was the boundary, and that was what it was. But, we had the challenge of, but I make that decision because I won the penalty. It's like, no. But once we got over that hump, it was then the norming, where everyone kind of knew their place, and then we started to win stuff together, and it was like, it didn't frighten me, the storming, because I knew it was going to happen. And I think that was the key thing, knowing that sometimes you're not doing something wrong when the storming happens. It's it's part of the process. And to get through it quicker, you need the purpose and leadership. Yes. And to get everybody driving in the right direction. 100%. So obviously, you're working with people, and you're finding the right people, and you're looking for people. So just start back to your career. What did you start off doing, and how did you sort of end up doing what you're doing now?
So when I left school, I didn't go to university. I didn't have very sort of big aspirations. I didn't really come out of the education system feeling like I was going to have any sort of real success. I have many issues with the education system as a result. It's not always right for every child. So when I left, I did a few jobs. I worked in a swimming pool. I was a lifeguard. Swimming's always been a big thing for me. And swimming has been a major thing in my life, really. And so I was a lifeguard for a while, then sort of went off to work in a bank for a bit. I hated that. That wasn't for me. Worked in a car dealership for a bit, sort of doing admin and that sort of thing. And then one day I applied for an admin pool, basically, at South Wales Police. So they were just looking for a load of admin assistants, and you get put where you get put. I got put into police recruitment. And that was the stories I have from that. It's really fascinating what you sort of see what the recruitment process sort of goes through. And it was a real first exposure to recruitment in such a regimented way. But really, really fascinating as well. And I did that for a little while. Then went into sort of general HR, then went into job evaluation. And then one day I went to I think it was called Springboard or something like that. It was a women's event, and the Chief Constable of South Wales Police at the time was a woman, Barbara Browning, and she did sort of a speech. And I think it's something that's said often now, but I think was not often said back then, which was, as women, we feel like if we apply for a job, we need to know how to do 110% of that job. And I think everyone's familiar with that concept now. But it wasn't a familiar concept maybe sort of back then in my early 20s. And so I came away from this and went, all right then, I'm a woman. I'm going to go and change the world. And it really inspired me. And she's got no idea who I am, this woman.
But it's amazing, that voice, just one person.
Just that one person inspired me to go, all right. And I started to do my CIPD qualifications, and then I went off and applied for a role that I definitely didn't think I was qualified for, but I got it. And it was back into recruitment again, but in a different way. It was in Cardiff Council, and all of a sudden found myself responsible for all of the temps in Cardiff Council. Oh, wow. Now, Cardiff Council is huge. So on any given day, there were about 500 temps that were sort of sitting under me, if you like, and the contract sitting under me. And then I did that for a while, but then I take a leap into the private sector and did a similar sort of thing, but contracted out into the private sector, sort of a managed service thing. And that was fine, and did that for a bit. And then I decided to take a year out. And it was life-changing, really. And I said earlier about swimming and how swimming's always been a big thing for me. And I took a year out to go and teach scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef.
Wow.
Yep.
Awesome.
And that changed my life again. It's those formative moments, isn't it? And that.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to press the pause button.
Yeah.
You know, you have to say, well, I'm doing all these activities and still not quite hitting what I need to, but I've got responsibilities and I've got to live in a house and, you know, buy food and stuff like that. And then you press pause and reevaluate life and come to different conclusions. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You know, I was 31 when I did that. Most people think of that as something you do when you're 19.
18, 19 to find yourself. Yeah.
But I was 31 and I went off and did that. And I sort of looked career-wise and was thinking, do you know what? I might not come back to the same level of job, but that's okay. I'm just going to do this thing for me. And I came back and applied for anything, basically. That's what you do when you need a job, isn't it?
Yeah.
Applied for anything, but ended up at Motor Novo Finance. And again, another really, really formative place to work. When you're talking about purpose and a whole team being behind one mission, that was an organisation that did very, very well at that.
Right, okay, cool.
And eventually I became head of recruitment there. And so I was there for quite a few years. And when we're talking about teams, best team I've ever had. And my business partner now was in that team. And we have an employee that was also in that team.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So just go back to the year out that you had. What conclusions were you coming to in that year out? Because obviously you've got some time to think, and there's a lot of people that have had time out, so to speak, in the pandemic, where they've had time to rethink their careers and their jobs. So what conclusions were you coming to in that year out, where you were kind of formulating what life could look like beyond 31 and the workplace and the workforce?
I'd worked in all kinds of HR into the run up to that. What I really enjoyed about being in Australia and doing what I was doing was the positive aspect of work can be positive.
Yeah.
Work can be fun. Work can be exciting. And for me, I think that's why I then went down that recruitment route, because everybody remembers the moment they were offered a dream job, right?
Yeah.
And you create those moments.
Yeah.
And you have those memorable moments with people, and you hear them sort of laugh and cry, and they're so excited that you've offered them that really great job. And so I think that's why when I came back, I still wanted to be in my profession, but my profession to sort of niche into the recruitment side of things was because I enjoyed the positivity.
So giving those people those moments.
Yeah.
That's what you enjoyed the most out of it.
Yeah.
I thought I want to help people find themselves, to find what they really want to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of what you're doing now with Talent Tent, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So when obviously you work for clients and you're looking for candidates and stuff, I mean, since the pandemic, what would you say is the biggest change in sort of like the recruitment world and what people are looking for now?
I think for me, the difference that we've seen is the younger generation coming through. You sort of Gen X's, 24 and under. I love them. I love their sort of attitude and outlook on life, because when it comes to having a work-life balance, having a job that you enjoy and that you feel you've got purpose in, balanced against being able to leave on time and go and enjoy a life that you've got purpose in, that is absolutely key to that generation.
Yeah.
And the things that matter to them are very, very different. So I've got a lot of time and energy for that generation and helping businesses prepare for that generation to join the workforce. Because a lot of businesses haven't got the hang of millennials yet. And, you know, millennials are 40 now. So...
yes, it's mad, isn't it? Yeah, they're hitting there. Yeah. So you've got the millennials and you've got Gen Z, which is what you were talking about. They're calling them Zoomers. That's another. It's like from Boomers to Zoomers.
Yeah.
But you're right. They've seen the pain of millennials and Generation X, so to speak, just working themselves to death, and they're like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I really, really respect that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way the world of work has got to go. I think your older generations are also figuring that out, because when they got to go and sit at home and work for a year and had a better life, they're going, right, okay, I want more of this. There is a big disconnect though. So the demand for flexible jobs or remote or hybrid is exceeding the actual supply.
Yeah, I agree.
And what I would say to any business, if they want to get top talent, make your job as flexible as possible, because that's what the best people are looking for.
You know, and even in our business, you know, we were probably quite pioneering with the 4-day work week, you know. So we brought that in I think it was 2019 in the May.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we're running it 4 years come May. Which, you know, at the time it was like, in the creative industry, it was very used to people working long hours with loads of unpaid overtime, blah, 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 blah. So that was quite alien in that world. And, you know, we went through the process of learning how it best works and stuff like that. But since COVID, I think what we've had to do is adjust to that. No one wants to commute an hour and a half to a place, particularly if they can. Yeah.
Why? Because they're sitting on Zoom calls all day anyway.
Exactly. So one of the big things that we've done, and I don't know when this goes out, but where we are now, we've just got rid of our office, which is a major shift, because for me, when I boiled it down and I was asking those deeper and deeper and deeper questions, the reason I was holding on to it is probably more of a vanity thing, that it's nice to have an office with an address. And come and have a look at my office. The problem is I wasn't even going to it. Yeah. Because I didn't want to drive an hour and a half to there. And then, although there's the camaraderie and there's brainstorming some ideas and stuff, it didn't warrant having an office where out of our staff, only 2 to 3 people were using it a week.
Yeah.
With a large team, so to speak, it didn't make sense. So we'd rather get rid of the office and give our team, use the same money to upgrade everybody's kit and that sort of stuff, and give them a better working zone. Yeah. Which is a shift, but I think the issue is that there is a demand, but I think it's the CEOs, the managing directors, the business leaders are having
they want to play chess all day.
Yeah, but they're trying to recollaborate, because it's like everything they knew was normal has changed, and either they move, as you said, or they lose. Yeah. And I think I've had to think about it and go, well, actually, you know, we were pioneering 4-day work week, but it doesn't stop there. Yeah. You have to, if life keeps changing, you've got to keep changing. So that was the thing. And I think when you close the office down now, I'm like, well, we could be anywhere. Yeah. We could hire from anywhere now. We don't have to hire in the Southwest or Wales. We could hire people work in London. Yeah. And in fact, I was reflecting on it the other day, I'm spending more time in London than Bristol now. Oh, there we are. And the trains are... And there's great talent there. Yeah. And it's like, I get on a train and it's an hour and 15 minutes into London. Yeah, whereas I used to drive. Yeah. And now, because of the restrictions, I remember parking near a place called Acton Town, and it was free. So you just park there and get on the tube and no problem at all. I think it was like a junction 1 off the motorway, M4. And then they just kept putting restrictions. So it's take you further and further back. So now it makes sense to go on the train, but it's a game changer. I know it costs, but you can sit on the train and, you know, you can do a bit of work. And obviously you've got to get your timings right, because I think it was a couple of weeks ago, they had 5 carriages when they were booked for 11. Oh, I was on one of them a few weeks ago as well. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. But the point is, work is changing. I think you're absolutely right that we've got to keep, if we want the best talent, we're going to have to adapt. Yeah. I was introduced to a really interesting concept a couple of weeks ago. I met the founder of a company called Work Trip. Yep. And they're sort of moving towards being the Airbnb of corporate days out, if you like. Yeah. So really, really interesting company. But the concept she introduced me to was having a gathering strategy. And then if you're a company like yours or mine or any others that is intentionally remote first, having a gathering strategy in place so that when you do get together, it's meaningful is really important. And that really struck a chord for me. No, I agree. Because I've definitely seen it in organizations that I've worked with that are remote first, that there's a disconnect there. Yeah. So making that
that meaningful, just sort of cross paths and go, well, what are we going to do? Have a meaningful time together.
Yeah, and I think, and you know, there's a couple of companies that I know that have been doing it since the inception for like 25 plus years, you know, and they do gather regularly and do away days and things like that. And they probably see each other more than they did when they were in the office. So or certainly relate more with each other when they're in the office. So I think that absolutely the whole remote work thing, we didn't think we could do it. And working from home was, you're just skiving. And then the whole workforce had to do it. And we've proved that we can, you know, and we do websites, video editing, marketing strategy and stuff like that. So it can be done from home. That's the reality of it. And, you know, certainly with the parking charges and climate tariffs now to go into town. And if you go into London, it's the congestion charge. You know what? It is really hard to get into a city, and sometimes it makes sense to go remote. I mean, I went to a networking event a couple of weeks ago and talking to the people that work in London, and they were saying Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, that is London. Monday and Friday is a ghost town because people aren't going in. They're not going in on a Monday and a Friday anymore. They just they remote work those 2 days. Yeah. So you've got these amazing buildings being built.
They're empty.
But they're empty.
Yeah, there's lots of them in Cardiff as well.
Yeah, and same in Bristol.
Yeah.
Yeah, just state of the art, which ultimately probably just have to turn into flats.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to travel in so much.
Yeah.
So talk us through when you're looking for a candidate. Let's start with candidates. When you're looking for a candidate, that they've probably taken some time out for, let's say, 6 months or a year or whatever, and now they're looking for a role. What would you say, what do they need to prioritize to help to find the right role for them? What would you say are the things that would, you know, they need to consider before jumping into the interview process and grabbing a job?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I've already said, haven't I, about how I just applied for anything. I needed a job, at one point in my career. And sometimes that's just the case, is that you need money, you need to get into work, you need to sort of take a leap back into the workforce again. But for anyone who's doing it in a more strategic way, I suppose, and making a definite step in their career, it's quite easy to just look at what you've always done and do what you've always done again. Yeah. But if you are feeling that you need a refreshing change of some sort, now has never been a better time to be a career changer. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of scenarios here, but unemployment is historically low in this country for various reasons. And the war for talent is huge, and it is hard to find the best people. But if you've got transferable skills to maybe do something a little bit different, put your hat in the ring, because employers are becoming more and more open-minded to the concept of transferable skills and bringing in people who are more engaged with the vision and the mission of the business. Yeah. And then training for skills. So taking that opportunity to take a leap, that's open. But then if you are somebody who is just looking to make a move, take your next step in your career, I'd say reach high. Yep. You know, particularly women, take that advice that the Chief Constable of South Wales Police said, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. Take that advice, apply for things that you don't think that you're qualified for, because you'd be amazed what you can do if you're given the chance and given the freedom, and if you're working for somebody who's got their faith in you. But then also making the right move to the right company with the right values that aligns and fits with you. We've all moved jobs, and we talked about storming and all the rest of it, and found ourselves going, oh God, I don't know if I quite fit in here. So take the time to make sure it is the right place for you and that you really buy into the vision of that company. Yeah, I think that's the key thing for me. It's not the size of the job, the size of the salary, or the size of the opportunity. It should be the right fit. So like, you know, like I know shopping for clothes, I know there are certain stores that I will never fit in their clothes
ever. Even when I was a young kid and I was slightly skinnier and whatever else. So I would go to H&M to buy some trousers and I would leave depressed because I've got footballer's legs, the size 34 just wouldn't get over my knees, thinking, oh my gosh, I've put on so much weight. And then I'll go to another clothing place and they fit perfectly.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then I realized that actually the sizes of stuff vary. But what you need to do is find the right fit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, then I go, well, if I need to buy that, I'll buy that brand because I know it fits me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about the waist size or the legs. I just knew which would and which wouldn't. And I think for me, in terms of your job, is find that right fit. If you want the flexibility as well as the responsibility, then, do your due diligence, ask a few people, connect. And it's not difficult now to dig down into companies and find out a bit about them before the interview.
Yeah. There's so much out there. Glassdoor, Crunchbase, just anything. Google them. You can find so much out about companies these days. And really the stuff that maybe not be in, the shop window, if you like, and benefits that might be important to you that you might not want to ask about. For example, parental leave and that kind of thing. People might feel uncomfortable asking about that in an interview scenario. You can often find it online if you dig around long enough. Yeah,
exactly. So I think for me, it's like the as a candidate, it's finding the right fit, but find out what really you want to do. And I think this is where we go back to education. We're not asking enough questions around purpose in school. So we're educating people for results and ticking a few boxes, but we're not actually asking about what the person wants out of life.
Yeah.
And I think those, a careers day is someone and they're just trying to, you look like a sportsman. Yeah, you should do a sporting degree. They're not taking enough time to actually work out what gets this person up in the morning, what sets them alive. And I think, education for me needs to be asking those questions earlier. Yeah. So then when they leave, that they don't do a degree that on year 4 they realise
they don't care about.
This is the worst decision I ever made, and I've got £40,000 worth of debt, for example. Yeah. So I think for me, purpose for candidates is really, really important. Yeah. What would you say on the other side for a client? A client's looking to build their workforce. What things do they need to look at, to get the cutting edge over another company? Yeah,
I think for a client, employer brand is really important. So your employer brand is what engages an individual with your company very, very early on. So that completely integrates into the main brand of the organization. So when you're talking about a purposeful brand, that absolutely mirrors itself into an employer brand that people want to engage with. Yeah. Something that we do in our business is that we're not a classic recruitment agency in that we do hires for organizations under our own brand. We actually start building their employer brand for them and take that and advertise on behalf of that company. We believe, and this is something that we actually saw when we were in-house recruiters, that if we had the statistics to back it up, if we recruited somebody through a recruitment agency where our brand was hidden, they were less engaged and more likely to leave during probation than somebody that we'd recruited through our own brand.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that's really important because from day one, the individual is engaged with who you are. Things like having purpose is really important, particularly to your younger generations. Yeah. Things like we've talked about flexibility, having that flexibility, it's really important to get the best talent in. But, the real basic stuff like moving on from a bare minimum mindset. And we talk about the bare minimum mindset, which is, I'm legal. Mm. I'm meeting minimum wage laws, or I'm meeting minimum leave laws, or whatever it may be. Move away from that bare minimum mindset and start thinking about the human that's come into your business and how that human will feel engaged, but well rested, but motivated, but well cared for. What can you do to set that person up to not only succeed, but grow with your business and become absolutely worth their weight in gold to your business as well.
Yeah.
That commitment they've got to your organisation.
No, it's true. I think, it's about giving the people the responsibility and being strong enough to say, look, go for it. Just, rather than, micromanage all the time. Because I think there's that essence of, with the whole working from home thing, it was like, they're just going to be watching cricket or football during the day and not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then we were forced as a nation to go through it, or as a world to go through it. And actually businesses were productive in it. And now it's just fundamentally changed the work, the work environment. It's we're never going back. The hybrid will always be with us. But I think, if anything, for SMEs, they're probably leaning on the thing of, going remote, because you're stripping out costs in terms of the rates, the rent, the this, that, and the other, and then they can have the best kit to do what they want. And I think for me, it's gone beyond that big building thing. And I guess in the pandemic, where co-working spaces really suffered, I think now, if you own a co-working space company, you're going to do really well out of it. Because they, I was in one the other day, and company with 100 staff have just got rid of their building, and they've just taken 20 desks.
Oh, okay.
And they just go in as and when.
Yeah.
And that is commonplace, and I think, wow, so much has shifted.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, incredible, really.
And look at the environmental benefits of that. The carbon footprint of that business is just, reduced by 80% almost, doesn't it?
And it aids us as a B Corp, you see, because we're a B Corp, and when we started and process, a lot of our team lived nearer. And as Bristol's quite an expensive place to live. So if people want to move or own or get bigger houses, for example, then it makes more sense to move slightly out of town.
Yeah.
But then that starts to affect the carbon thing as well. So by getting rid of the offices, you could argue that that's actually moving closer to B Corp as opposed to further away. So, or if you are going to go for a property, have it near a train station or a public transport that allows you to get there. So those are the big shifts that I've seen.
Sustainability things.
Yeah. So for instance, so there's clients, there's candidates. So what other things do you get involved with? Because I love the thing that not every company, certainly an SME, has an HR department, and yet people is the biggest asset. So do you want to share a little bit about HR and the stuff that you do there?
So the HR side of things, it can really, really vary. But if I give you an example of a project we're doing with an e-commerce business at the moment, they're 40 or so people. So we are responsible for, we do all of their recruitment for them, but as well as that, then we are responsible for their HR for that business. We have a great relationship with them, and we've spent quite a lot of time in the business getting to know them, the feel of them, the culture, how they work. And we've built out for them a performance management process.
Yep.
So that performance management process is all about taking the values of the business, integrating them into how the business runs on a day-to-day business and what people are targeted on.
Yep.
So that means that they are a more values-focused organisation. And so throughout the year, their staff will be performance managed based on the values of that organisation.
Yeah.
And so that's an example of one thing that you've done for them. But, other things we have done is, guide people through the process of exiting an individual that's in the organisation as well. So, sometimes that is the right thing to do for an organisation is to exit an individual.
And it's a scary thing.
It is, yeah.
When you identify it and you go, actually, this isn't working out for all parties, for example, how do you make it a win-win for everybody as well?
Yeah. And yes, you can Google it and try and do the bare minimum mindset, see what ACAS says or whatever it may be. Yeah. But you're right, it's scary, and it's scary to get it right. And the impact that it can have, whilst these processes should always be confidential, when somebody suddenly sort of disappears in a cloud of smoke, the impact that it might have on other people in the organisation and managing the sort of message there as well. Yeah. So having somebody who's a specialist and who is qualified in it, yes, it's more expensive than Googling ACAS, but actually it's often worth it to make sure that it's a process that you're confident in and that doesn't have a major impact on the rest.
Well, it's
of the
good.
business.
It's good having someone in your corner, So, like for instance, when we made the decision to go 4-day work week and stuff like that, obviously that affected all the contracts. So it's like this is new. We haven't done this before. So we're going to have to update them and change them or whatever. So, we work with our HR company that we outsource to for those things.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's what's good. Or we can pick up the phone and say, what do you think about this situation or scenario? And they can advise. And I think you're right. It's better than Googling to have someone, an outsourced HR team, because as you said, the people, it's like if you buy a car, you have an aftercare service.
Yeah.
It's like the same with HR. It's like once you've got the people on board, you need to make sure that you're continually doing the right thing by them to get them to where they need to get to. So,
and that's what we do.
Yeah.
One of our founding principles is people are not commodities.
Yeah.
And there are very, very good recruitment agencies out there, but there's also very poor ones that treat people as commodities. And it's just about making a buck off one individual and walking away. That's not what we do. We don't walk away.
Do you think, though, I always think the term is misleading, human resources. Do you think that?
I prefer people and talent.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like just the term human resources sounds like a very baby boomer thing.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself needs resetting or restyling or whatever, because it's care for people at the end of the day, isn't it? Not human resources. I've always struggled with that term.
And there's very different approaches. You often see HR criticise saying HR is not for the people. HR is there to protect the business. They are not on your side. But strategic HR is on your side. When you take that step back and go, how do we make the organisation better? That is on the side of the people, absolutely.
And I think the point you made about values, because, when we're working with an organisation building the brand and we're putting values in, we're often educating people what values are. And I'm not saying they don't have them. They've probably never articulated them, we find.
Yes.
And so being able to articulate the values that they commonly hold is really important.
Yeah.
So, for example, when we talk about making decisions, it's making decisions around those values that really, really help.
Yeah.
And it holds people to account.
Yeah.
But you can reward against them.
Yeah.
And I think the issue with values has always been is that they're just underplayed and underused.
Yeah.
And it's always about the talent. It's about the talent, or it's the skills. But it's like, if you've got the right values, you can have multiple personalities in your team.
Yeah.
And there's no threat because you're commonly held around a set of values.
You're all going in the same direction.
You're all going in the same direction. I think in the past, if you don't have values, everyone's competing with one another for who's the most skilled in that area, who's that and the other.
Yeah.
So values are really, really powerful, I think, in any organisation. And putting them into a business and showing them this is how they work rather than just words on a wall does transform businesses and retains talent at the end of the day.
Definitely. Absolutely.
So we're coming to the end, but I just want to, just a couple of tips on retention for the CEOs and business owners. Just a couple of, maybe give us the top 3 tips to retain your team. What would you say?
To retain your team.
Keep them there.
To keep them there. Trust them and give them flexibility.
Yep.
Train and develop them.
Yep.
And then pay them for the skills that you've given them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been really cool to have you, Katie. I've really enjoyed our time together, and I'm sure we'll get you back.
Thank you for having me.
But trust you've enjoyed the experience.
I have. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank
Cheers.
you. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. We'd love you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also follow us on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon podcast platforms. A review is really helpful for us to get the message so you can make purpose a priority.